This afternoon, we're going to be looking at COVID-19, what's happening at the moment with the virus and how that impacts on the logistics and the warehousing sectors. We have two guest speakers today. Unfortunately, one of our guest speakers from Brewdog couldn't make it. He's been called away to a very urgent meeting. But Gary has stepped in and he's going to do two presentations, one the Brewdog presentation for us and one his own. So thank you very much, Gary, for that. We really appreciate it. We want this to be interactive, so there is a Zoom chat, so I will be monitoring that all the time. So if you've got any questions, feel free to do that. Once each of our speakers have done their presentation, if you want to ask a specific question, if you go to the raise hand option, then we'll be able to see you and we can ask you to ask the question and we'll unmute you. Just for technical purposes, I just need to tell you this is being recorded. So if you don't want to be on the recording, then just keep everything to the chat because then you won't be actually part of the recording. We do, as we said, want it to be interactive. So feel free to ask as many questions as you want all the time or make some comments throughout. And I think, Martin, we are going to open up a poll just to get some people's feedback right at the beginning.
Yeah, I'll do that now. Here we go.
Lovely. So if you could answer the questions, we really appreciate it because it really helps us in how we shape the conversation this afternoon, because we want to make sure it's valuable to you as possible. We all know that it's definitely not business as usual. We also know, depending where you sit on the spectrum, to whether you are just starting to think about going back to work and how you can manage to do that, or if you're in the sort of grocery reselling side of things, you might already have been back at work, or if you're part of the warehousing, logistics, supply chain to people like the hospitals, the NHS and care homes and people like that, you've been through possibly maybe the thick of it. So do feel free to let us know where you are on the spectrum. So to kick us off, it's really nice for me to be able to introduce Gary, who's going to give us the case study about Brewdog and what they did when the crisis hit. Over to you, Gary.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Yeah, so the situation is I'm taking Brewdog as a case study, and it's obviously, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Brewdog are a sort of funky high street alcohol retailer. And they sell across multiple channels. So they're selling retail through their bars and wholesalers. They're selling also in all the big supermarkets. They have a monthly subscription. They have a channel selling merchandise, and then they have their B2C channel. And they're quite a complicated client for us, even in normal times. They're very although they're a colossal company, they're very much owner run, and they come up with new ideas very regularly, and often don't necessarily share them with us. So sometimes we're left in a very reactive position. And what basically happened with Brewdog is, with all the bars closing, their volumes online went almost ×8, ×9 within a day or two. And obviously with social distancing, it created us a huge amount of problems because, our team went from more or less 20 people on Brewdog up to about 80 or 90 people within a couple of weeks. And then we were dealing with everyone's anxiety at that time about social distancing. None of us really knew what to do. We just put our best foot forward and just came up with a plan. But what became apparent to us is one of their sales channels, which we call multis, enables a customer to order multiple SKUs in each order. And in that particular sales channel, the average order is 21 items and 15 SKUs. And I'm not sure of all your background, but that's a complicated e-commerce order by any standard. It's really like a wholesale pick. And because they have a lot of SKUs, what it meant is we would have had to have 40, 50 people, 30, 40 people in a very small aisle picking. And number one, that's inefficient. And number two, it's completely dangerous, in this current time, to have people too close together. So what we decided to do in Brewdog's case, after a few days of panic as we were sinking, because we'd never known volumes or times like that, it took us about a day or so to get our head around it, is we split the business into 4 sections, i.e. the 4 sales channels as individual production departments. So we did that and started getting our head above water in terms of the volumes within 3-4 days, which was quite good. And all of the couriers as well were falling over because their volumes were so high. So in a way, that slightly helped us in the beginning for a few days. And then what we had to do is volumes actually continued going up. So we then expanded to a night shift as well, 5 nights a week, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And we've coped very well. A lot of our staff have repurposed themselves. We haven't furloughed anyone or laid anyone off. Basically, we just had an all hands meeting and, just sort of said to everyone, look, there's unlimited work here, but you're going to need to retrain, go in the warehouse, we'll train you, learn how to use a scanning gun, learn how to do this. And in that way, you're going to be busy. And when we come out of this, we're going to have more volume in any event, because all of our retail clients were closed. So, in testament to my staff, they did retrain, and everyone has stayed busy. Pretty much everyone has stayed healthy. Quite a lot of people have been quarantining. We've been about 10% down on staff every day, but that kind of cycles as people come back. And that's what we did. So in summary, we took the whole production, we divided it into separate channels, and then we staffed for those particular channels. Quite a lot of work needed to be done with the couriers because Parcel Force were unable to collect all the volume. They became too busy. We set up another courier, Hermes, and a second one as well, DX. And it took a lot of system work, but basically we find ourselves today with a happy customer, thank God. So that's Brewdog.
Gary, did Brewdog also change what they actually made? Didn't they bring in a alcohol sanitizer?
Yeah, they came out with, they did a hand sanitizer, and then they did a couple of quirky SKUs. They did a lockdown lager, and they've done a current one now, which is on the website, which is a little bit touchy with the current political situation. But yeah, they're very, very reactive, and the next thing is they're going to have face masks or whatever. They're that kind of company. So yeah, so we've been distributing that as well.
Thank you, that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay, I don't see any questions. We'll come back to you a bit later on. So it now gives me pleasure to introduce Tony to give his take on what's happened within the sort of 3PL logistic marketplace.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Hughes. I'm a senior consultant for Davies and Robson, a supply chain and logistics consultancy business based in Northampton. Our warehouse projects typically include some layout work, equipment and process evaluation and design work. We do warehouse sizing, equipment planning, resource planning, and sometimes we also help people identify a suitable site once we've done the design work. Our transport projects usually involve centre of gravity analysis, network planning and network design. We also specialise in contract negotiations and outsourcing of operations. We have a specialist recruitment division as well. I personally have been in the logistics and supply chain industry for over 30 years now. I've worked for most of the leading third-party logistics providers. I've worked in automation. I've also worked in warehouse simulation as a consultant. What I wanted to talk about today, so I've just lost a little bit of the slide, was that what a couple of my customers did to prepare the workplace for COVID-19 and the challenges that presented. Talk about how people will plan their operation, talk about the impact on cost, and then maybe talk about some of the options moving forward in the short term, medium term, and longer term. Like I say, one of our customers we had saw a significant increase in sales. It was a food distributor in the business-to-business environment. They had an increase in sales across the whole product range, but in particular, they were selling rice and flour, and they saw significant growth in that area. The same customer, though, also had big problems getting replenishment of the stock. A lot of the items have long lead times. The items are imported or manufactured within the UK. And what happened is they had a decreased supply from their suppliers at a time of increased demand. So they had to be very careful about managing the supply chain. The second customer we had is a manufacturer and supplier to the building industry. They experienced a complete closure of the site and the operation initially once the COVID outbreak took hold. And consequently, some of the warehousing operations and some of the delivery operations continued, but what was happening was they were delivering reduced volumes and it was not cost effective, but of course they needed to maintain their customer operations. Today, as we speak, the volumes are still reduced. They're operating at 20% capacity today. Some of the staff are still furloughed. They're in the process of bringing staff back. When we spoke to both of these companies, though, they had a common approach to what they did in the warehouse, similar to what we see in the supermarkets. They've introduced social distancing in all areas of the warehouses. They've introduced one-way systems. They provided additional PPE, sanitization stations. They've installed new floor signs, new floor markings, etc. They've increased the cleaning of the site, and they've introduced a monitoring program to make sure everything's cleaned and checked off daily. What they've also introduced, probably similar to Gary mentioned earlier, they've introduced staggered shift times as well, and they've also introduced different break times so people aren't all, collecting at the break areas. They've also reduced the access to the communal areas. Some of the toilets and other areas like the vending machines has been switched off. The other thing they've introduced is working from home for most of the staff, so they've introduced a lot of online meetings. Both of them have said that communication with the staff has been key, and in some cases with the unions as well. Okay. What we have reported, though, is that it's been difficult for people to operate with a reduced workforce. A lot of people have got underlying health issues, or they're shielding others at home, or they're off work themselves due to illness or self-isolation. Also, people have been off work to look after school children, so it's been very difficult to actually identify the workforce. We have seen an increase in agency staff with some of our customers, so they take up more agency staff, which has made things difficult. The other things we've had reported is that the productivity rates in the warehouses have changed, so there's additional cleaning before and after use of some of the equipment. Also, operators are observing 2-meter rules, which means that there's a little bit of interference that's taking place with some of the activities. And they've introduced zoning and segregation, which has resulted in less efficient operations as well. Consequently, the resource and capacity planning of the operation has become very difficult. We've also seen a change as to what's actually being delivered to customers. The product ranges have changed significantly. The order quantities have changed. We're seeing some customers who actually stopped doing each picking and have only provided case pick or full pallet picks in some instances. Some customers have introduced a minimum order value, so concentrating their available resource on picking larger value orders. We've also seen changes to the delivery frequency, with next day sometimes replaced with name day delivery dates as well. One of the things we've seen is the fact that the cost of doing the business has changed, and in every case it's increased. The The service levels are changing as well. So we've seen a significant increase in e-com orders since the outbreak of COVID. Also, some retailers traditionally not selling through e-commerce are now finding this is their only way to market. We've also seen an increase in order times, as I said before, and there's also a reduction in the availability of some items. And consequently, the operating margins of some of the items are now changing. So the other factor that we also need to consider is the fact that Brexit is coming in, which will affect the availability of labour. Okay. So, like I say, we do feel the availability of labour is changing at the moment. We've also got an increase in the minimum wage. So what we're anticipating is that short term, some highly efficient automated solutions may become increasingly popular. All systems also offer increased efficiency and also support social distancing. We're seeing some of these solutions with less people, which naturally helps social distancing and also segregation of staff. So what we anticipate is that some low-cost, quick-to-apply solutions might be worth considering. On the top left of this slide, you'll see an ABC analysis graph, and at the bottom left-hand side, you'll see a warehouse layout. Traditionally, we've used ABC analysis to identify fast-moving SKUs and to put these into the similar part of the warehouse, which has allowed for efficiency in pick. With the COVID requirements, we've now had to see operations where they're changing the layout to spread out the fast-moving items. Also anticipate that investment in machines such as conveyors may be becoming increasingly popular, relatively quick to install and apply. The one on the screen is a boom conveyor, which is used for unloading containers. Currently, typically there's 2 or 3 people inside a container, but a boom conveyor would allow for some flexibility and increased efficiency, but also allow for segregation of staff. Another thing we're anticipating is the use of autonomous mobile robots. This is a term that's becoming increasingly popular. The one on the screen is what we call a follow robot, which follows the operator around the warehouse. There's another type of autonomous robot I'll touch on in a minute. These robots are ideal because you don't actually need to make any physical changes to the warehouse layout, so it's a relatively quick to apply solution. The other thing we think that might become increasingly popular is AGVs as well. Again, there's a reduction in the workforce, which again helps with social distancing. Medium term, we anticipate that some projects might be a little bit more capital intensive, but again offers some of the efficiencies and also some of the social distancing. So we anticipate an increase in the fetch or the Kiva type of robot system. Again, this is an autonomous mobile robot, and this is where the storage units are actually delivered to the pick face. The operator is static, and the picker stands and picks items into shipping containers. This, however, would require maybe changes to the warehouse layout, and also it does require more system testing and integration. So this is why I've considered this to be a medium-term option. These systems do have do allow for condensed storage, but they don't operate in the full height of the building, so it's not really maximizing the use of space. We're also anticipating an increase in zone picking, maybe supported with conveyorized systems as well, where totes and orders are picked in discrete work zones. These will be supported maybe with pick-to-light systems. The other thing that we anticipate in the future as well is the increased of automation in the packing, labeling and sortation area. So I think a lot of orders will actually be maybe automated. Okay. And finally, some longer term investments would be some high capital items, where maybe the investment and the capex return on these is typically between 2 to 5 years. So anticipating an increase in robotized picking solutions, goods demand type systems such as the auto store, we believe will become a popular system. Maybe this is a bit of a challenge in the current environment, but we've seen an increase in the use of automated mini load systems and ASRS, automated storage and retrieval systems as well. They are more expensive and more long term, but they do offer, operations which aren't reliant on the workforce. But again, this is coupled maybe with a downturn in the economy, which might be a little bit more challenging. So to conclude, I think every company has been impacted differently as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Highly likely in most cases, though, that the operating costs in the supply chain has increased. In each case, the operating methods will need to be reevaluated. And I believe that moving forward, we will see an increase in automation as a direct result of an increase in online sales and also a reduction in the availability of labour. And that concludes my presentation.
Lovely, thank you, Tony.
Thank
Gary,
you.
do you want to carry on now with your main presentation?
No, I think I'm happy, just to answer any questions if you want to ask me, because I mean Tony really covered the situation that we found ourselves in our own warehouse with, dealing with distancing and picking inefficiencies, and what is interesting that Tony did highlight on is we are actively starting the journey now of looking at how robotics can help us. The whole COVID thing really accelerated that idea because it made us realize, our reliance on people's health and also the supply of labor. And with a lot of agency workers and Brexit and minimum wage going up, we've noticed a much harder getting labor. And also we're competing with warehouses such as Amazon and, other big 3PLs that are paying very high premiums for staff just for 1 week, 1 month contracts. And, these kind of agency workers, are quite happy just to move a job for, 50 pence an hour, 30 pence an hour more, which is significant to them. So we're looking at automation earnestly now.
That's interesting because obviously automation comes at quite a high cost and we're in a low profit margin industry. So do you see that capital expenditure is going to be much more important going forward?
Well, I mean, it's a good question, Sue, but, we're just at the beginning of the journey, but we were looking at some robot system, I believe it's called Chuck. It's Six Rivers. Tony will remember the name. I think it's Six River Systems. But I mean, that's a lease arrangement. And, a robot's only costing about 7,000 a year to lease, which is really not a lot of money considering an operator is 20K a year, round numbers. So I think if we can make it fit our applications, which is a different story for us because we're a multi-user site and we have, give or take 70 clients that we're working for and thousands of different products and shapes of products and weights of products and different picking methods. But if we can find elements of our operation that can be streamlined and we can use robotics, I think the investment for us is going to be well worth doing.
Okay, a couple of questions have come in. So, Tony, if you can unmute yourself as well, there's one to both of you that's come in from Paul. Are you seeing a move and a trend towards 3PLs offering more last mile services? And how are they pivoting their business model to provide these services?
Tony, do you want me?
Yeah, if you can. I'm just thinking about that.
Well, I'm not 100% certain what if I'm understanding the question correctly, but what we are noticing is very urgently clients looking to find a 3PL and on board literally in 1 week, 2 weeks, but they are looking for 3PLs with all of the courier integrations. We have 17 different couriers we're integrated with to do the final mile and gather all the text and all the integrations to pass all the data real time. So if I've understood the question right, that would be my answer, or please re-ask if I haven't.
I think really where Paul's coming from is that obviously we've all been used to probably a mixed, lots of it going to shops and warehousing, open warehousing space, whereas now we've had to get used to a completely online retail system. And therefore companies have got to adapt very, very quickly to last mile delivery to public. And what change has that brought about?
Yeah, I mean, there's, to my knowledge, there's been no introduction of new couriers sort of suddenly becoming players as last mile deliveries. I think it's all of the same companies with the infrastructure to do so. I'm not sure of any 3PLs that are kind of expanded their network into doing that.
I guess we're still in the early stages as well, post-COVID. You know, some of the volume has increased in certain areas and reduced in others. And I believe the carriers can cope at the moment. They are busy, and you will see the couriers working extended hours. But I don't see anything really significantly changing apart from the volumes and the sources change, maybe.
Okay, and then we've got a question from the Netherlands from Marie, and she goes back to the thing as I mentioned about the cost of automation. And do you see actually that it's going to be a cost passed on to the customers rather than the up to now, which has happened, is that the logistics industry has covered those costs internally?
Well, Anne-Marie, unfortunately, it's very hard to pass any costs ever on to customers. You know, sadly, it's not really something that works. You know, most clients, you know, when you talk to them to try and pass costs on, will say, look, you've worked for us for long enough. We think you can find savings through efficiencies. We have in our contract that each year we can put our price up, certainly in line with minimum wage increases. But I think this whole look at robotics is to make us more sustainable as a business, because, you know, we have less risk because we'll be, you know, employing less staff. And I think it will increase our margin. So if anything, you know, it will be more profitable for us. And that's really our reason for that move, anticipated move.
Tony, have you done any cost analysis on the implications of automation against staff?
Yeah, sure. We do a lot of analysis with customers, identifying what their current costs are, what their current order picking times are. Look at the whole operation, basically, understand, you know, how an operation works today and how the operation could work with the introduction of automation, which whatever sort it is, whether it's a robotized follow system or a sort of a goods to man type system. In each case, I think, as Gary said, it's unlikely that you'd do this if it was at a non-cost to the customer. The customer typically wouldn't accept that, especially if you're a third-party logistics provider trying to do that. But of course, there's challenges now in terms of the availability of labour and actually being able to supply the volumes which are required through the supply chain. So we see a significant change in this moving forward, in that the efficiency gains and the fact that volumes can be delivered will change people's view as to why they might justify automation. So I think the goalposts are moving a little bit quickly. I'm just wondering whether some of the automation suppliers will be able to keep pace with the demand, whether they'll be able to manufacture items as quick as required. We do see a lot of people actually implement automation and don't fully understand their business. Consequently, they haven't done the analysis on the order profiles, or they haven't understood what the size of the SKUs are, or allowed for any flexibility in the solution. So, you know, what happens today might not happen in 3 years' time or 5 years' time. So we see significant change in that. Sometimes some housekeeping is required as well by the customers, where maybe there's a different solution for fast-moving items to slow-moving items, and people don't keep on top of that and understand the business. So it is it is difficult. You know, I think sometimes people invest in automation because they think it's the thing to do as well. So I think it's a real challenging area. For me, I like to see some value if automation is introduced. I need to see a real benefit as to why it's being done, whether it's to allow quicker processing of orders or to save costs. I've seen automation implemented because it saves space, and consequently the space saving has meant a company didn't need to relocate to a new facility. So there's all sorts of factors I kind of see with automation. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, great. I think space is a really important issue, especially in the UK, where obviously we're losing a lot of logistics space to residential as a need to build more and more housing is coming in. So I was going to ask that question, does automation increase or decrease the space you need?
I think you need more space with automation. I think you'll need more space.
That's my view. So therefore, when land's a premium, actually, are we increasing our fixed costs even higher?
Yeah.
I think for me the answer depends upon what automation it is. Whether if it's a high bay, fully automated warehouse, and you're maximising a small footprint and you can go high, then obviously it's a great use of space. If you're using something like the Kiva system, which is a shelving system, and you're only utilising 2 meters of the height of the building, and you've got a 14-meter building, it's not particularly great. If you can put some automation maybe on a mezzanine floor, or you can provide a very dense storage solution, maybe something like the auto store system that can provide very dense storage. So I think there's no one set answer. I think it depends upon the automation type and the application of that.
Well, now we're in this interesting new world. Do you think supply chains are going to change? And if they are going to change, how do you think they're going to change?
I think maybe where product is sourced from will change. I think sourcing of product locally will increase. I think people's view on stock holding might change as well. I think that there will be obviously a change to e-commerce, and my view on that is that a lot of people who maybe didn't shop online before now are taking to that as a way of doing their daily shopping. I know my parents are very nervous about going out and going to the shops, so I think that's going to change. So I think instead of picking big orders and sending them to retailers, there's lots more single item picks and multi-SKU picks, like Gary suggested with BrewDog. I think those kind of situations would impact the supply chain significantly as well.
Gary, I know you were saying is that you're almost reinventing some of your business and you're becoming a PPE supplier as well. It's going to be interesting, I think, going forward, just how companies are going to reinvent themselves and going to need a good logistics support system behind them. Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think now is just being, for us, just being as present as possible in the marketplace so people know we're around. We've put out a couple of white papers at the moment and quite a few blogs, on this subject, just so people know we're here, because I think right now it just needs a lot of creative thinking from everyone, and I think in amongst all the mess there's a lot of opportunities, and we're just actually doing another marketing campaign to PPE suppliers, because this whole design of PPE is now becoming an industry. It didn't even exist 3 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago. It's just now becoming a new mode of selling. And I'm talking to one particular company that's been licensed, and we're packing 2 million Mickey Mouse PPE things and all of that for this company, to tell you who they are. And we're doing a lot of this kind of stuff, just speculative. Someone's got an opportunity and they're making a business of it. But I'm thinking what I believe will be an opportunity with the change of supply chain is a lot of the retailers now, I think, will be looking to companies like mine, or will be doing it themselves, where they're taking part of their retail estate and holding inventory in there, and then doing their fulfillment from local distribution centres. So it could be a shop on Oxford Street servicing within a 20-mile radius. So they'll have mini distribution centres. So they'll almost do a click and collect in bulk down to their store for the next morning, and then shuttle stuff out to the clients. And I think that's going to happen in the same way that restaurants now are doing dark kitchens, which are, you know, restaurants that do lots of cuisines but are just doing home deliveries. They're just dark kitchens, just cooking food and delivering. So I think so many things are going to change. It's an exciting.
I think that's interesting, because when Argos, before it was bought by Sainsbury's, decided to open up the back door and allow people on the way to work or on the way home from work to collect their goods from these stores, that's when actually their online business took off, and they really did start to reinvent themselves. This whole idea that a shop might actually be its own distribution unit, it's very interesting.
Well, I think it's likely to be a distribution unit, and in certain products, you know, I think it's likely just to be a showroom, you know, without the supply chain costs of replenishing it every day, you know, for certain industries. I think that's very likely. But it's very interesting. And I think the thing is that, you know, the courier companies, you know, are beyond their limits now. You know, they really are. So I think those volumes will theoretically need to decrease to be sustainable for them. But it would be very interesting. It would be very interesting.
Tony, are you seeing any new inquiries to sort of how people are readapting themselves and changing their business?
You know what? I'll be honest, we've gone quiet the last few weeks. It's like the world stood still. We're kind of anticipating a lot of our customers will be returning to work gradually, and that will happen. Otherwise, I can't really report anything at this stage. Sorry, sir.
Yep. I'd like to bring in Serafina now, because Serafina is the MD of LogistCompare, and ask her about warehousing space and what inquiries people are making. And is there a shortage of space if people are holding obviously a lot of stock that they haven't been able to sell, but want to bring in new stock of things they can sell? So over to you, Serafina.
This is Serafina. I'm the CEO of LogistCompare. Yes, I mean, what we have seen has been really quite a lot of demand, in particular for sanitizers. There's been quite a few customers looking for inventory, extra storage for sanitizers, food, also drinks as well. That's what we've seen around. And I think, yes, I mean, this is what LogistCompare does, actually helps these clients to find warehouse space easily and cost effectively. So regardless of the length of time of storage, regardless of the type of product you may have, you know, we can, I'm sure we'll be able to help you out. But yes, to answer your question, Sue, yes, we have seen additional demand, especially for space. Recently, as you may also know, we had a few containers as well, which were looking for space, because as we know, all the shops on the high streets were pretty much in their own warehouse completely full. So therefore, containers arriving, there's no place to go. And there's been a lot of demand for this type of space as well. So yeah, absolutely. This is something which I think is here to stay. Demand for extra space is not just something happening now, but the space shortage here in the UK is quite an issue, and the on-demand space, I think, is on raise up.
There's also an opportunity going forward that people can do short-term lets of space when they've got some spare capacity and maybe actually have a revenue source they haven't had before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are times during the year when you actually have plenty of space available to rent out, and one way that retailers or any customers who's got space, one way they can actually generate extra revenue is actually rent out this space that otherwise would be just unutilized. So yeah, there is a great way to actually occupy or anyway rent extra space out, but also generate extra revenue.
Brilliant. We're just wrapping up now, so if there's any last questions, if you can put them into the chat or show your hand, that'd be really great. Anne-Marie, it's good to hear that it's the same in the Netherlands. It's always nice to know that you're not alone in this world, and hopefully you now realise that in the UK we're having similar issues to yourself. And maybe I think one of the good things that might come out of this and what we've seen is that people are now actually much more open to be collaborative. We are starting to say that actually we all need to work together and actually make this work in a more collaborative way. And if the world gets more connected and more working together as one unit, I think that's actually a positive that can come out of this. So it's really nice, Anne-Marie, to have you with us, and I hope you found this really interesting over in the Netherlands, and it's been good to have your input back. And I see that Marty's just put up the results from the poll. It's interesting about the high street. It's almost a 50-50 there, which is not what I probably would have put my money on. Automation, yes, I think everybody agrees that's the way we were going beforehand, and it will accelerate. And it's interesting you think there is going to be significant warehouse space in the future. So that's really an interesting result from our poll. Thank you all very much for taking part. And what I think is going to be really good is that maybe we can keep this dialogue going and come back and re-look at it in 6 to 8 weeks' time, because I think it will be maybe a little different, slightly different story to now. This is going to be a series of webinars, so we will keep you up to date what's happening and when the next one's going to be. And we are thinking maybe we even might make it a Facebook Live as well. So it'll be interesting how we expand this whole seminar session. Thank you all very much for giving up your time today. We do appreciate it. Martin, do you want to say about the video and how you're going to let everybody